Okay, we ready? That's a yes or no?
That's a yes.
Okay, good.
You ready?
You want a loud yes?
Yeah. Just so I can hear.
Yes.
I see the excitement isn't too great for our subject.
Well, what if this? I don't know what the subject is. Oh, well, that's good.
Your neshama knows.
That's a good one.
We're going to learn today, Mitzvah Shem. Last week we did class because, of course, we should also be Tammuz. And next week we'll see what happens. But today we're going to basically have a class on the 3 weeks, including the period of the 9 days. Mitzvah Shem Tisha B'Av laws. God willing, if we have a class next Sunday, then we will be doing Tisha B'Av halachas, especially for this year. That Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, so we have to know what the restrictions are applicable on this coming Shabbos, as well as for the coming Sunday and anything extra that happens in the year. That Tisha B'Av is deferred from its ideal day. So the 3-week period is it's a tough time. It's tough historically, and it's as we have all these extra restrictions that happen. Mourning laws. We're in mourning for the destruction of the temple, and we will just begin with a preface of what we learned from this previous week's Haftarah. It says that when we enter the 3-week period prior to Tisha B'Av, what's called as Bein HaMetzarim, or between the constraints, then we have 3 haftarahs that are read in shul of Pur Anusa. This means that the content of the haftarahs are discussing the curses, so to say, of what the prophets foretold to the Jewish people that would happen if they didn't shape up. And historically, as we know, by the Second Temple and primarily by the First Temple, Hashem sent Nevi'im to tell the Jewish people basically shape up or ship out. And that's the Haftarahs that we read during, and other false prophets giving a false message of hope and a false message to what happened by the Holocaust period, where we had also mixed messages being sent from leaders, So some leaders forewarning and other leaders giving confidence for everyone to stay, and then nothing will happen. And however, the false leaders, as we know, their prophecies did not come true, and that's why they were judged very severely. And the leaders who forewarned us of the mistakes, their haftarahs are what's read during the 3 weeks. One of them, of course, Yirmiyahu, that was this previous week's haftarah. He's the first of the 3 haftarahs. And there, it discusses how he had a dream, and he had a vision. And in his vision, he saw a staff that was growing almonds on it. And he asked God, what is the meaning behind the message of this specific item in my dream? And Hashem told him, this is a sign that the prophecy that you were about to prophesy, don't think that this is, I'm giving you a year, 10-year warning. This is imminent. The prophecy of doom is imminent to occur, in order to warn the Jewish people right away. So that sounds very melancholy and sad, but in truth, Chassidus had explained something a little deeper and interesting, and that's as follows. It included in this in this prophecy, which was meant to help the Jewish people wake up, it was also contained the subliminal message of the purpose of the perennius, of the tragedies if they don't. And that is what's hinted to in the type of almond that grew. It says the almond that grew was the luz. It's a specific type of nut. The luz nut is very bitter in the beginning and then eventually becomes sweet. And the message of this was to tell the Jewish people that there's going to be tough times, but the purpose of this is to eventually bring out a sweetness. And that is, as we know, that it says in the Medrash that Hashem came and destroyed the temple, which is called Ariel, in the month of Ariel, which is the month of Av, which is known as Aryeh, for the sake of rebuilding Ariel. It's similar to a construction job where you have to destroy the current premises in order to then build up a big palace. And even though, so that's what's very interesting, that even though in the world, when you have to give punishment to a person for a crime, you're not thinking about rehabilitation. You're just thinking about punishment to get back for what he did. With the Eibishter, there's no such thing as punishment for the sake of punishment in a means of its own. Punishment in Judaism is always in a way to better the person. It's like taking alcohol and putting it on a wound, an open wound. So we have that burning and screaming pain that occurs at the time, but that's, of course, to disinfect the wound. That's, of course, for the sake of bringing the person to a state of healing. And so that's really what the whole idea of the 3 weeks is. And that's why it's put down, as the Rambam writes in his Sak Halacha and Mishnah Torah, that in the future these days will turn into days of joy and feasting. I understand that in the times of the temple, we're no longer going to follow the laws of the mourning of the 3 weeks, but to turn it into feasting, why? Terrible things happen. As the answer is that then we're going to be able to foresee how all these occurrences were part of the cure, part of the building of the temple. As it says in Navi, we will then thank God for anaftabi is for punishing us, so to say, for hitting us, as the hit was for the sake of bringing about the greater reward. Okay, with that said, what is the purpose of all the mourning laws that we're going to be learning in detail of the restrictions? What do they accomplish? And this is a general question. What does mourning accomplish? When a person passes away, what's the connection between me being sad and mourning their passing and not doing laundry? What's the connection? Sad people don't do laundry? Maybe it's true. I guess people who are depressed, don't do anything.
They don't clean the house.
Right. But what's the purpose? What's the message? So the answer is like this, is that any matter that represents pleasure, represents a human pleasure that we benefit our bodies, such as bathing and wearing fresh clothing and all these things. So at a time of mourning, what happens is that the klipos, the evil forces, the forces of impurity are much stronger. That's either now globally during this period of the 3 weeks, or particularly when an individual is going through a period of mourning for a relative. That's why it says that when a relative passes away, it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, based on the Talmud, that they shouldn't view it as if this was a personal, individual decree on that individual. No, this is the sword. The lashon is that the person should view it that the sword is hanging on everyone's neck in the family. Because this was really a tragedy for the entire family, and therefore they should be careful, they should beware, and not to do things that are dangerous during the period of time, etc. So the reason for that is because the klipos are much stronger during that time, and by us keeping the mourning laws, we in essence feed the klipos, as klipos live off depression, they live off sadness, they don't like joy. They could also live off joyous occasions, but the greatest klipa is atzvus, is depression, and they live off that stuff.
So if somebody's in mourning for 11 months, like the Nancy Kaddish, that applies to the whole 11 months. They have to be careful.
Yes.
Like they're in time of judgment.
Well, there's a gradation. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch, the gradation during the first 3 days, then the 7 days of the sword gets more distanced as the time passes by. But yes, a person should not be involved in anything dangerous during that year. Just like we try to avoid dangerous things during 3 weeks, quite similar. It's for the same type of reason. So the keeping of the mourning laws, what it does is it basically feeds these famished klipos, that they get their due, they get their dosage, and then they can back off. So it alleviates them, it pushes them away. It's like a barking dog that is barking to get a bone, and you're just refusing to give him the bone. Just give him the bone. He'll be quiet. He'll leave you alone. Because usually the dogs come back. In this case, they don't. Once the period is over, they're gone. They're finished. So the mourning helps to alleviate the judgment, and that's why it's brought down. The keeping of mourning laws helps alleviate the judgment of the neshama, as these evil forces, they also persecute the neshama. So by the children and other relatives, the 7 relatives keeping mourning laws, it helps to alleviate the neshama of the deceased. And the same applies regarding the 3 weeks. Every person's neshama is a personal mourner during the 3 weeks. Whether we feel it or don't feel it, the neshama desires and yearns and has a passion for godliness, which is missing, doesn't see due to the exile. And this is a time that this is when it happened now. And the neshama is in a state that it needs that extra sweetening that's accomplished through keeping these mourning laws. So that is the general purpose of them. We're going to begin with the 3 weeks, which means the halachas that apply throughout the 3 weeks, and then we're going to go through the 9 days. So just to know chronologically, we had already 1 full week of the 3 weeks. We have another 2 left, and the 9 days this year will be beginning in a few days on Thursday night. Okay, so
the laws about laundry only start with 9 days, right?
Correct. So we're going to go through We're going to go through now 3-week laws, meaning laws that apply throughout the entire 3 weeks. And those laws that are added in the 9 days, that's the next chapter we're going to do. We're first going to do this chapter, and we're going to go through differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim regarding who keeps what. So in short, during the 3-week period, meaning the entire period of the 3 weeks, the Ashkenazi custom is that we don't do any weddings, we don't do any haircuts, we don't listen to music or dance, we don't say Shechiyanu, we don't buy or wear expensive garments, we don't hit people, we should never be doing. We don't hit even children, even for chinuch purposes. Back in the day, when in the chinuch system, they still used to use the rod almost on a daily basis for keep the children in line. So during the 3 weeks, that was when the children, ironically, that's when they were able to celebrate during the 3 weeks. Because the custom is that they don't get hit, so they can do whatever they want. It's on cheshbon, don't worry. They kept a pad.
They were counting. Oh.
Absolutely, they had a mark. Got everything after the 3 weeks. Yes, after the 3 weeks they received everything. But during the 3 weeks they have 3 weeks till they receive it, because they don't hit during 3 weeks.
Well, I have a question. There's some people say yes, and are you allowed to buy clothing that you're not going to?
We're going to get into it.
Okay.
We're going to go through everything here in detail. I'm just giving you the list of what we keep throughout the entire 3 weeks. And now for the list of things that we start keeping only during the 9 days. Again, the details will be forthcoming. We delay court cases with a Gentile. We do not buy or sell expensive items of simcha, such as jewelry. We do not build or renovate homes for pleasure purposes. We do not plant, such as having a gardener come and plant for pleasure purposes, for beautification purposes. We don't eat meat or drink wine. We don't launder our clothing or wear freshly laundered clothing. We don't purchase or wear any new clothing during the 9 days. We don't bathe or shower for pleasure purposes during the 9 days. And we don't cut nails starting from the week of Tisha B'Av. This is the general list of restrictions. We're going to go through them in detail. Let's first just clarify regarding Sephardim. So there's a number of leniencies that Sephardim have regarding the 3 weeks. Rather than call it leniencies, we should call it that Ashkenazim have a number of stringencies. As all leniencies that the Sephardim do are really that they're just keeping to the Talmudic law. According to Talmudic law, many of these restrictions that we're mentioning, they are specified that they are restricted only the week of Tisha B'Av and not prior. Ashkenazim became accustomed to extend it even earlier throughout the 3 week period or 9 day period. Sephardim just never accepted this custom. So that's why in some of these things, while Ashkenazim are stringent, Sephardim keep to the letter of the law of the Talmud, and they never accepted a stringent custom. So one of the examples is weddings. Sephardim can get married until the end of this week. They have until Thursday night to do a wedding. Till Thursday night they can get married and do weddings, but not Ashkenazim. Also for cutting hair, they are not accustomed like Ashkenazim to avoid cutting hair during 3 weeks. They do cut hair until the week of Tisha B'Av. Other differences we'll mention later on.
The week of Tisha B'Av this year starts on the Sunday before? Or?
The week of Tisha B'Av this year is under debate because Tisha B'Av this year falls on Shabbos and is pushed off to Sunday. So if it fell on Sunday, then there would be no week of Tisha B'Av because it's Sunday. That's it. But since it falls on Shabbos, so the question is, what do we follow? Do we follow the actual date? The week of Tisha B'Av technically is next this coming Motzei Shabbos is the week of Tisha B'Av. But if you say Tisha B'Av is not the day of Tisha B'Av, but it's the fasting day, the day that we actually follow all the Tisha B'Av laws, then the week of Tisha B'Av is again only Sunday. of the following week. So this is a debate, and Sephardim are lenient and Ashkenazim are stringent. So for Ashkenazim, anything that we say is Asr the week of Tisha B'Av, this year we have a full week that it's Asr for, starting from Motzei Shabbos. While for Sephardim, anything we say is Asr during the week of Tisha B'Av basically means it's Mutter this year for them.
Mm-hmm.
So Sephardim have a lot of leniencies this year.
They will even have weddings up until the...
No, weddings starting from Rosh Chodesh. They're not
right.
from Rosh Chodesh. They don't do. It's not from the week of Tisha B'Av.
I have a question. I'm getting married. My Shabbos collar actually is on Tisha B'Av.
Oh, wow.
Me
Right.
and another lady getting married that same week. So I thank you, but our Shabbos collar default. So that was a big question. Should we have that week before? Should we have it and don't
Okay, so first of all, Mazel Tov for the engagement and the upcoming wedding. And I'm glad you asked me the question because I already had so many people ask me the question, like, who is in contact with this kala?
And me and another lady.
Oh, it's two. So maybe they were asking me on behalf of someone else. Okay.
Yeah, you get it double.
Bottom line is that as I reply to them, I'll reply the same thing that I replied to them, is that a Shabbos kala is not there's nothing involved in a Shabbos kala that contradicts anything that you do on Shabbos, meaning that the one thing that you're limited in doing is dancing, that you can't do during the 3 weeks. We don't dance. So if you plan a dancing during the Shabbos kala, so even if it's on Shabbos, that you would not be able to do. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, everything's normal. The fact that you're having a get-together and everyone's blessing each other or singing, that's not a problem at all. Just that, since it's Tisha B'Av, this next Shabbos, meaning the following Shabbos, after next Shabbos, this coming up Shabbos, therefore, the halacha is that we're not supposed to have a get-together for Shalosh Shudas, meaning the Sudas HaMafsekes. So you have to make sure to schedule it that there will be a private meal, Shalosh Shudas, Sudas HaMafsekes, that takes place before Shabbos is over without the Shabbos Kala participants.
Everybody has to get home in time to have their own as well.
Yeah.
Shalosh Shudas is the Sudas HaMafsekes, right?
Correct.
But
Yes.
so you said don't have Shalosh Shudas. Like, what do
No,
you have?
what I said, don't have a group.
Oh.
If you don't normally,
it's supposed to be a sad
it
meal.
does. No, it's Shabbos. You can't be a sad meal. We have to. Mercham next Sunday. Mercham will have a class on this. It's tricky because you're not allowed to show sadness on Shabbos at all. No mournings on Shabbos. On the other hand, since it's officially the Sudas HaMafsekes, so you're not supposed to go above and beyond what you normally do. Mm-hmm. So because it says that someone who doesn't normally have a Shabbos Kala every Shabbos, so then they shouldn't have one for Shalosh Shudas time. They should do it beforehand. And Shalosh Shudas should be however they normally have. They normally eat by themselves, should eat by themselves. Normally eat with two people, they eat with two people. If you eat with your family, eat with your family. However you normally eat it, that's how you should eat it. But it shouldn't be, for example, shuls don't do this next Shabbos, a huge get-together, Shalosh Shudas, Sudas HaMafsekes get-together party. No, you can do that for the Shabbos day meal. That's not a problem.
Okay, so my question is, we scheduled it from 3 to 5, so that's we're in the
time.
Safety zone.
Yeah, so Sudas HaMafsekes is probably like at 6:30. Yeah. Well, you have to stop eating mashkia, so you have about, so let's say 6:30ish people will do it. It'll be an early mincha.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's begin going through the detailed halachas. So we're going to begin with engagements and weddings. So as we stated, the Ashkenazi custom is throughout the entire 3 weeks we don't do weddings, and Sephardim only begin the restriction from Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av, so that's starting this Thursday night. And this, even though in general we give allowances of marriage for couples who are childless, meaning that most marriages where the chassan and kala were single and were never married before, so they're getting married for the first time. So generally we say, well, the mitzvah puravu and getting married should push off this restriction, but there's an added reason of why we restrict weddings during this period of time, and that is because of the mazel. When we get married, we begin a new mazel for our homes, and since the mazel is dependent on time of year, we don't want to begin a new mazel during bad mazel. So that's why, another reason why we push it off. And it's actually considered a sakana for the marriage to get married during the 3 weeks, even if there is a heter. But Sephardim, they say that the mazel is only bad for them starting Rosh Chodesh Menachem. They say their bad mazel doesn't begin earlier. So So that's how they get married. Until then, we avoid starting from when the 3 weeks begin. Regarding engagements, there is no restriction. A person's allowed to get engaged throughout the entire period of 3 weeks. They can even have an engagement party known as a l'chaim, which is just some sweets, some food, some snacks are given out without washing during the 9 days. We don't wash for a meal by a l'chaim during the 9-day period.
You don't wash for a meal at all?
No, you can wash for a meal, but not by a l'chaim, not by an engagement party. By an engagement party, since it's considered a su'udas rishus, it's a big party meal. It's a meal of simcha. Therefore, we don't wash during the 9 days for such a meal. Every other meal you can wash, not a problem. The reason why engagements are permitted, even though that's also a act of tremendous joy, is because the reason recorded in the Paiskim is that if not now, then when? In other words, it says like this, that if you don't get engaged now, if you delay it for 9 days or for 3 weeks, maybe someone else will manage to get her hand before you. And this is a lesson in Shidduchim. The Rebbe points out in this, in a number of letters, that from this Talmudic and halachic statement we learn, that it's not enough for someone to say, well, since God decreed upon every man and woman who their bashert is, who they're going to marry, so I don't have to place that much effort or any effort to find them, and it will just fall in my lap because that's the divine decree. And I don't have to be worried about someone getting to her first. So from here we see that that's not correct. That it is possible for a person's bashert to be usurped from him and end up marrying somebody else. And that's why a person must place due effort to get married and find the lucky one, and find their other half. Ad kedei kach that we say even on Tisha B'Av you're allowed to get engaged, even if it's just delaying it 1 day. 1 day. Can we get engaged on Tisha B'Av? He wants to propose on Tisha B'Av. I don't know why.
Morbid sense you.
But it says, yes, he shouldn't push it off just because it's Tisha B'Av. If he wants to push it for other technical reasons, fine. But he shouldn't push it because Tisha B'Av as Shema Yakdimenu Acher, maybe somebody else. It's not just we're thinking, come on, who's going to get in between the couple in 1 day? It's also tefillas, prayers. If there's someone else that is davening to marry this girl, he put his eye on this girl, and he's davening to Hashem. Hashem can accept those tefillas and cause her to start having second thoughts. And that's why it's important to finish off the engagement right away. What happens if you're invited this week to a Sephardi wedding? What do you do? So if you're the Kala and the Sephardi is the Chas, and you tell him we can't get married, the halacha is that even though when a woman marries a man, she follows her minhag, and that's until the marriage. But prior to then, she follows her minhag. So she has to tell her Sephardi Chassan that I understand you're allowed to get married during the 3 weeks, but not with me. You'll have to find someone else. You have to wait till after the 3 weeks to get married to me because I'm an Ashkenazi. But once, let's say they're both Sephardi and they are getting married during 3 weeks till this Thursday night. So if they have Ashkenazi people coming to the wedding, the question is, can they come? And this is a big machlekes about what to do in such a case, and the answer is that you can show up to the chuppah, and if necessary, meaning if the chassan and kala will be very saddened if you don't show up to the meal, you can also join the wedding feast. But otherwise, you can't join the wedding feast. So you just show up for the chuppah, and that's it.
Is that different on Sfira? Because I went to a bar mitzvah on Sfira, and it was like they were holding by Rosh Chodesh, or whatever, and I was holding from a
bar mitzvah is bichlal. You're allowed to go to a bar mitzvah during Sfira. That's not a problem. You're allowed to make bar mitzvahs during Sfira.
But there's music.
I understand. Some places can say you're allowed to have music by bar mitzvah during Sfira.
So, but I was told it doesn't matter what I was holding because if they're holding different, then I can enjoy the music from there.
By a bar mitzvah, the heter is because some place can hold that it's mutter to have music by a sudas mitzvah like a bar mitzvah. By a wedding, however, you're not allowed to schedule a wedding. A bar mitzvah, what are you supposed to do? Okay, he's going to become, push off. He'll become 13 a month later.
Right.
There's nothing to reschedule. It's a done deal. And of course, according to the calendar. But by a wedding, it's not a done deal according to the calendar. You can schedule for whenever you want.
So what if the bar mitzvah's in the 9 days or something? Or
so also no, we don't do music during the 9 days.
so they could have the party afterwards. Or
so some do the party afterwards, but many do the party without music.
Okay.
So it's done. They don't do music. They have singing. They do singing without music. Without meaning a band. Okay, regarding haircuts, the restriction against haircuts, as we said, that for Ashkenazim, this is throughout the entire 3 weeks. For the Sephardim, this only begins from the week of Tisha B'Av. And since, according to Sephardim, this year there is no week of Tisha B'Av, so they're off the hook this year. And I was asked to remind everybody that they have special deals now for conversion to Sephardiism for this kind of 3 weeks.
A lot of Sephardim don't take conversions, actually.
So, you have a few days left till the 9 days. Technically, it's there is a way according to Halacha to convert, but it's all the way. It's not a temporary conversion. It's not a visa, it's not a tourist visa that you get in for the 3 weeks, and then right before Ella, you make sure to get back to the Ashkenazi side so you can get out of saying
Remember, you had to start it, yes, sister.
So.
Probably.
Okay, so this restriction about cutting hair is not just hair of the head, it's actually any body hair. This applies to both men and women. The restriction against cutting any body hair for mourning for the whole 3 weeks, for Ashkenazim, whole 3 weeks. However, by women, there are certain leniencies, and the reason is as follows. In the laws of mourning for a relative, it's a debate of whether women have to avoid cutting hair out shleishim or not. And we rule they do, but since there are opinions who say they don't, that's how the Sephardim actually ruled it, only for Shiva, not for Shleishim. So therefore, we see that there's a basis for leniencies for women. There's more room for leniency for women than there is for men. And the halacha is like this, is that women are allowed to cut any hair that's necessary for tznius purposes or for beautification purposes for their husband. So that's mutter. And otherwise, however, it would fall under the restriction, and all hair is not allowed to be cut from the body during the 3-week period unless it falls under those reasons. Also, regarding children, we do not cut even hair of a child during the 3 weeks, meaning it's forbidden for an adult to cut the hair of a child. Even though, in general, there are no laws of mourning for children, a child never mourns. If a child's chas v'shalom relative passes away, they don't mourn. No restrictions to them. But nonetheless, when it comes to public mourning for the destruction of the temple, we do apply the mourning restrictions to them, and that's why even a child cannot have his hair cut during the 3 weeks. Okay, so a child got, let's say, gum stuck in their hair, so you can cut that area. But I'm saying like getting an actual haircut, that's the restriction.
So a child doesn't have mourning laws until their bar mitzvah?
Mourning for a relative. They don't have till the bar mitzvah.
Until the bar mitzvah.
Yeah, bar mitzvah. Okay, any haircut questions? Okay. Music and dancing. So the halacha is that it's forbidden to dance or play music during the 3 weeks. And from this came the Isser as well to listen to music during the 3 weeks. And even though back then when this was written in the place, they didn't yet have recorded music, there was no machinery yet, technology, but the same thing applies. So the idea is to diminish in joy. People put on music, and we have a whole music industry. In fact, today's music industry is mainly with recorded music. There's people spend most of their music listening time in recorded music, and they're obviously doing it for a simcha reason. There's a reason why they're doing it. They're not doing it to review the music and send back corrections on the lyrics. They're doing it because they enjoy it. So since we diminish in enjoyment, we diminish as well in even recorded music, and that is the minhag asur l'shanes. This issur of listening to music applies to any type of music. Doesn't matter what type of music it is. You have some who say that if it's a nigun, it's okay, but this is a very strange and difficult heter to accept, as the restriction always was on any type of music that will be listened to for joyous purposes. So what difference does it make if you enjoy this or if you enjoy that?
So what about all the a cappella music?
That's something else. That's without instruments. But anything with instruments, the musical instruments is that's defined as simcha music, and that's what we would not be allowed to listen to throughout the 3 weeks. Regarding a cappella, so even though technically you could say, well, they do such a good job, I enjoy this as well, the custom is to be lenient, and since the entire basis of not listening to music is custom based, so therefore if